I graduated from UCLA, and I had racked up a couple internships, financial and otherwise, and I just wanted to do something fun. So I applied to Columbia Pictures, and I got the job as an intern. Then they created a position there for me as like basically a marketing slave, and I worked there for a year. And I started seeing where some of the money was going, and I thought, why can't I just create my own company and be sort of the basket of where some of these funds are going into? So at 23, 24, I left. I started my own promotional advertising company and immediately got orders from a lot of the major studios, and made a lot of money at that age without a lot of real effort. And that, a lot of life is just about having the confidence to do what you want to do and have the follow through. And that was really a good lesson for me, because then I just sort of thought, I can do whatever I want. And so I bought a canvas one day and I started painting. I used to draw my Dungeons and Dragons characters as a kid, but I never really thought of it as a career. I started painting and I enjoyed it, and I was making enough money to have a gallery on Abbot Kinney. So I ran my little advertising company out of the gallery, and I just paint all day, and my assistant would do the work and I'd deal with the clients. And that lasted for years. So I sort of...
How long did you do that?
About 16 years.
Oh, you did that a long time.
Yeah.
This was in the 80s and 90s?
90s and thousands, but I sort of coexisted in doing that company while also running the gallery.
What was Venice like back then, Abbot Kinney?
Venice was very much the same. The spirit's very much the same as it was. I sort of chuckle when I meet people and they say, "Man, we want Venice how it used to be." And I ask them how long they've been here, and they've been here for 3 years. And I'm just like, the biggest change for me was around 96 to 99. Hasn't changed much since then. That was just sort of when it became, you could feel that became less dangerous than it used to be. And when I got onto Abbot Kinney in the early 2000s, there's a very cool neighborhoody vibe, a lot of mom and pop stores. Obviously, most Venetians don't like chains very much because they like the uniqueness of everything about Venice, including the storefronts. Mm-hmm. And I was one among several vendors that started First Fridays around 2005. And back then it was more focused on the stores, and that we'd all have parties, and we'd stay over and late, and people could buy things at a discount. So the whole street was a bunch of parties, but mostly neighbors that you knew. And I would try to get my friends to move into Venice, and a lot of them just didn't want to move down there. It's too gritty. Mm-hmm. But you started to see a change after a while. And I started doing parties with Vanity Fair and Red Bull Vodka and Campari, and having these really cool art openings. And my friends started moving down here. And the funny thing about Venice is people tend to stay in Venice. So you move to Venice, and then if you want to move again, you stay in Venice, but you just move somewhere else in Venice. Mm. For me, it's a perfect collision of creativity and the beach that California has to offer, because if you go up north very far, it gets colder. You have access to all of the resources of Los Angeles here. And if I'm going to live in a coastal city, I want to be next to the water. And even where my art space is now, I do find that I miss the sunsets if I'm there too much. So I'll try to spend the night here at least a few nights a week if I can.
You don't feel, these people have been here 3 years like me, oh, it's not like it used to be. It's pretty pricey to have a storefront on Abbot Kinney
now
these
it is,
days.
Yeah. I mean, my space was probably $2,000 a month, and now spaces that size are going for around $40,000 a month.
That's kind of crazy.
And I was going to buy it for a little under $1 million in 2003, and now it's worth $35 million.
That is so insane. That part's changed a little bit.
It has changed.
But you feel like the spirit is
it's
largely
still here.
The same.
And as we talked about earlier, change is going to happen, and you can either be flattened by it or you can be a part of it. Those are your only two choices. So if there's something you want to change, then you become a part of that shift.
You don't feel like resisting this or the Googles.
No, man.
I
go in there and, I would go in and talk to them and ask them to be more imaginative in how they spend their money.
Yeah.
Like if I was going to be Adidas and have a storefront there, I wouldn't even sell anything out of that store. They have the reason why they have that storefront is it's operating at a loss. There's not enough parking to sustain that store. They just want a storefront on a popular area like Soho or Beverly Hills,
Sure.
Venice, Abbot Kinney. Now, if they're smart, since they aren't even making any money off of that, do sort of what Blake Mycoskie did with Tom's, but even take it further, where it's just a performance space, it's a hangout space. You do Adidas, artists take Adidas things and make, are inspired by Adidas to make art out of it. There's poetry readings, music, a coffee bar. Then Adidas is cool. Then Adidas should be on Abbot Kinney. That's how these stores should play it. Is just something so unusual and unique that they actually get publicity. It becomes a part of the community. People in the community use it. That's the right attitude for me if you're going to come into Venice.
That's a great idea. So you, for 16 years, you had your company, you had your art gallery. When did you get to the point where it was time to change that?
Well, I grew up on survival stories that my father would feed me as a kid. Everything from Hugh Glass to Admiral Byrd, and I also grew up reading Tarzan books, and I just like the idea of just being out and alone and adventuring, and so I just felt like I'd done LA to the extent that I could do it. Like I had a successful gallery, I was throwing big parties, I was painting a lot of really cool art, and I just sort of thought, you know what, it's time to go. And it's better to go when you're on top, because then you feel the power of that decision than when circumstance forces you to make a decision. So I had a fair amount of money at the time saved. I had some art sales that potentially were going to make me more, and I just thought, you know what, it's time. And the best thing to do when you make a decision like that is to almost announce it, because then you're forced to be responsible for it and people start believing it, and then in a way you don't want to let the people down. So I allowed myself to feel the pressure of my publicly making this decision almost a year before. Like, I'm going to disappear on this date. And I just started telling everybody, and they're like, you really are? I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go. I'm just going to go.
What do you mean disappear?
Well, I didn't have contact with almost anybody for years. They didn't know where I was. I just walked off and I was gone.
I think like the average person would understand wanting to get away and have an adventure and all this stuff, but still would want to keep in contact with people close. So this is a very foreign idea to me, the disappearance part.
Sure, because we live for only 100 years out of all of human existence, are we so interconnected that seems weird. But for any time before 1900 or 1860 or so, you walked out there that door, no one knew where you were till you came back, especially if you went somewhere. If you went on an ocean voyage, your family might get a note that was handed to 3 different people 3 years after they'd given it to you. So traveling until very recently was alone, and you didn't know, your family didn't know if you were going to come back. And I personally wanted to have I just wanted the freedom of being unfettered, and there's a power, there's stupidity in it for sure, but there's also a power in knowing that you're the end of the line.